Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual interactive panel discussion brought to you by the ACHE of the Triad. My name is Alex. I'll be serving as your ACHE technical host for today. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items to help you navigate the program in our virtual environment. For the purposes of noise control, your lines will be muted for the duration of the session. The chat function will be available to you throughout the entire event, and we absolutely encourage you to use it to help keep the session as interactive as possible. Say hello, introduce yourselves, ask questions. We welcome hearing from you. We will have a question and answer portion at the end of today's presentation. Please feel free to submit questions at any time. This event is being recorded and will be available for viewing in ACHE's Learning Management System in approximately 2 business days. Today's session is worth 1.5 hours of ACHE Virtual Interactive Education credit. To earn this credit, you must be logged in for the entire 90 minutes of this event. All attendees who meet this requirement will have their 1.5 Virtual Interactive Education credit applied within 2 weeks from today's event. We do encourage you to complete the evaluation. Please visit the link in the chat box before we close out today's session. Please note all AI note takers are prohibited to protect the privacy and confidentiality of our instructors and participants, as well as the intellectual property rights of the content presented during the session. Now to start things off, I'll go ahead and hand things over to Jamie Pinkert.
Thank you, Alex, and welcome all. We're excited about this summer virtual symposium. Leadership is a topic that is near and dear to our hearts. We are at ACHE of the Triad and ACHE National interested in growing future and current leaders and finding opportunities where it's convenient and meaningful for you to connect with other leaders in healthcare. And this is one of those such times. And I'm excited about today's topic, leading those with more experience than you. I personally, throughout my career, have had opportunities to be invited into roles where the leadership or the team that was there has been a long-term team, and I was coming in new. So this is going to be helpful for me as well. And throughout this session, we'd like you to put your comments and questions in the chat. We'll have time for answering those throughout the program. And I'm just really looking forward to today. So for those of you, just a heads up, I'm going to put a Menti meter up in just a moment, but I'm going to let Ann Antrim, our esteemed former regent and current Board of Governors for ACHE, take off as the moderator and just really help facilitate this great discussion. We're excited to have you, Vi.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and it's great to be here with everybody. As Jamie said, I'm Vianne Antrim. My day job is the System-Wide Chief Nursing Officer for Cone Health in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I currently have the pleasure of serving on the Board of Governors for ACHE. I'm really delighted to be here with all of you today, and we have a very exciting and stellar panel to talk to you. So I'm going to ask each one of them to come off mute and give you an introduction of who they are. And then we're going to dive right into the conversation. But please feel free to put those questions in the chat. We'll try to answer them throughout the program. So Stephanie, why don't we start with you?
Thank you. My name is Stephanie Adler, and I'm Client Relations Team with RMF Engineering, and I'm happy to represent women in healthcare. I'm the president of North Carolina Women in Healthcare, and a little bit about my background. Leading people and individuals that have way more tenure than you. I was a protocol and training NCO in the United States military as a non-commissioned officer coming in. I often had people with 20 plus years tenure. And I also was a training manager at Discover Card, and I would have to implement new processes for people with way more tenure. So having to navigate those waters, I'm very familiar with that process.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Beth, why don't we go to you next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Beth Cottrell. I'm the Charge Integrity Manager for Hospital Billing System-Wide at Cone Health. I'm also President-elect of ACHE of the Triad and currently participating in Cone's Executive Nurse Leadership Academy. So I am a nurse by training. I've been a nurse for almost 33 years now. And the role that I'm currently in, when I took this position, I definitely stepped into a team that had a whole lot more experience than I did. But we have learned and grown through that. So I am happy to be here this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Beth. And Kevin.
Thanks, Megan. Kevin Rash, I'm managing director currently with Forbes Mazars. Prior to that, I spent 25 years, what I would say is inside industry, physical therapist turned manager because I was a great, you know, provider of care. We thought I could manage people and then moved into administration. And so I take my passion now and work with hospitals and health systems across the country. But most of all for me, being part of ACHE over the years, I had two great mentors when I became an administrator that encouraged me. And so share my passion with advancing others and being that adult learner. So glad to be with you and look forward to the conversation.
Thanks so much, Kevin. And for those who haven't seen it, if you look in the chat, Jamie has our Mentimeter posted there where you can access that. And here's the QR code. So please go ahead and if you haven't taken a moment to answer that question, let's go ahead and see what everyone is dealing with. So again, your question is, have you ever supervised someone with significantly more experience than you? So looking like a lot of people really have.
Yeah, a lot of good experience in the room.
And so that's great. You guys will keep us honest as we go through this presentation.
And it looks like we've got which aspect of leading more experienced team members feels most challenging? Managing resistance to change, navigating generational differences. That one really spoke to me. By
Yeah.
Credibility. Resistance to change looks like it's a strong winner.
Yeah. I'm not sure that is really related to someone having more experience than you or not. I think sometimes that's just the way change goes, and
Look at that
a lot to
cluster.
overcome. But that's definitely the top prize winner for this question.
Yeah. All right. Good
Great.
job.
Thanks, everyone, for your active participation. We appreciate that. Beth, we're going to kick it off with you. And why don't you tell us about the organizational culture that helps support the creation of successful multi-generational teams?
Sure. So I think it really has to kind of start at the top, right? We start with the organization's mission, and then leaders aligning with that mission and vision. You know, along my leadership journey, one thing that I've learned is, leading is not necessarily about having more experience, right? But it's about helping to create and cultivate that culture where everybody's experience can be valued and leveraged. So, one big thing that I think of is as you start out, and certainly I did this when I started my current position, you've got to go in with humility and also respect for those team members that have more experience than you. But you also need to be working on creating that psychological safety and building that trust. So, relationship building is huge. And just go in and be curious. So, I think it starts with that culture, and then you've got to have alignment. And then once you've got everybody that's working together towards that same common goal, then those differences in years of experience, and age and all the various, differences among the group of people, they kind of fall by the wayside. You truly gel as a team and you're working towards that one common goal of, improving patient care or being the best health system that we can be, being the best asset to our communities that we serve. Um, and so, to help create that psychological safety, you need to listen. Um, you know, it's been said, God gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason, right? So go in, listen, and then just genuinely acknowledge um, your team members' experience and their perspectives. Um, Certainly include them in decision making when you can. That lets them know that their voices are being heard. And I think we have all of these things in place with Cone Health's culture. I think we've got a great organization. But again, it's really just respect, curiosity, alignment around a shared purpose. Um, and yeah, I think great things come when all of those things line up. You just have to be intentional about it when you first step into a new role.
That's great. Thanks so much, Beth.
Mhm.
Stephanie or Kevin, did you want to add anything to that?
Stephanie, you can go, and I've got something after that if you want.
Yes, I agree with everything Beth has stated, and I also think that encouraging organizational mentorship, even reverse mentorship, is highly a culture that wants to bring in multi-generational teams and having those one-on-ones. The one-on-ones with team members is just so valuable, and just making sure that you're creating a space where that's allowed and you're welcoming and there's no barrier to someone coming and knocking on the door.
Yeah. A couple of things I would add. I call it, I grew up in a faith-based healthcare ministry. So being a servant at any level of, that component. And when Beth was talking about, be curious, and you got to be curious about the people that you're working with and encourage them, that empowerment, right? I unfortunately watch a little bit of TV, so the be curious takes me to Ted Lasso, right? When he's throwing the darts at the dartboard and he gets down to needing what he needs, 220s and one bullseye on his last throw. And if you're curious, you just need to make sure you're asking the right questions and encouraging that empowerment of the others. So
Yeah, so I'm curious, Kevin, over the course of your career, what style of leadership has really worked best when leading staff with more experience in their field?
uh, so the component that I just talked about, that servant leadership, is something that really was encouraged to me. And there's many stories, and I like to talk about what that means with some of those stories. And so what I would talk about first is how do you listen and hear? And as Beth was talking about the two ears and one mouth, my dad actually added to that. He said, "Hey, you have two eyes, two ears, and one mouth. Use them proportionately." So in that type of leadership, make sure you listen and hear first before you try to add in, and especially when you're in that environment where somebody has more experience than you. So as you heard earlier, as I was kind of going through introductions, so in my career, we took a physical therapist and made him a pretty quick clinical supervisor early in my career. And it's like, how do you clinically supervise somebody that's been out there 15 years more than you? And it's about observing and watching and adding, but also allowing them to give the input. Fast forward, 12 years later, we took a director of physical therapy and some ambulatory clinics and made him the VP of surgery. And so this is a story that I would say I had to put the scrubs on for like 90 days and understand what the circulators do, what do the anesthesiologists do, what do the CRNAs do, all those components, and be in there in real time to, one, quite honestly, gain the confidence of myself, right? Be certain, be confident, but also be humble enough to make sure that what you are trying to bring forward to be better tomorrow was listened to. So that would be the component. And I'd like to add this part. When I became that vice president, I had a sister of mercy sit me down at coffee And this is something I share with a lot of people, if not everybody that I come across. But she looked at me and said, okay, you've been taking care of today. You now have to make sure that not only you're not worried about today being tolerable, you're worried about tomorrow being possible. And so that sunk in really hard. And I just like to share that with others, that as you advance in your leadership, it's okay to honor the past to prepare for the future, but you just got to know what your role is and absorb all that in.
Yeah, so powerful, Kevin. Stephanie or Beth, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
I would like to echo some of that, Kevin. With leadership and leadership style, I like the influence-based leadership style, and also running towards the discomfort. The human brain is always wired to survive, and fear is part of that mechanism that keeps us from moving forward. And when you encounter something that you fear, you're not going to go towards it, and you have to force yourself to run towards discomfort. And I love to teach my fellow colleagues and my peers to run towards that discomfort. Let's see what's going to happen. And through failure, we create success. And also with that is that communication and active listening is also sharing. Tell them what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are and what you need from them. People always want to help and they need help. So Picasso has a great quote that says, the meaning of life is to find your gift, and your purpose is to give your gift away. So you need to give your strength and find your strength and share it, and you will receive that in return from your staff. And that's an influence-based type of leadership.
Thanks, Stephanie. Beth, anything you want to add?
Sure. So, I would say my personal leadership style is a servant leadership style, but also when you're, leading folks that are more experienced than you, I think there's a lot of value in collaboration, right? And so making sure that you're, again, back to what we were saying earlier, listening, valuing the experience that they bring to the table as well. Um, and also that reverse mentoring, just remembering that just because you're the leader and they are a team member does not mean that the learning's going in one direction, right? It goes both ways. We can learn so much from others that are on our team that have years and years of experience.
That's great. So Stephanie, I wonder if we can start with you. If you would give us an example of a project or an issue where you had a multi-generational team that worked on it and you had a really great outcome that everyone was so proud of.
Yes, and Jamie, if you can share a slide, I do have a successful example of multi-generational um, teamwork and how that mentorship works. It's the Conference to Classroom Knowledge Sharing. We do this here at RMF all the time. And what we'll do is send young learners and young employees to a conference, to a learning session, and they have to come back and present that to our senior staff and our senior leaders. And it promotes a two-way learning, new ideas, that real world learning, and suddenly they become the experts. They get that credibility, they create that ownership, and it also allows the individuals receiving that to ask those important questions, and then it just creates that future leadership, and it also breaks the barrier between the senior leaders and that young professional, and it helps develop their leadership skills. So that's one great way that you can break those barriers and create successful multi-generational teams.
I think that's amazing. And if I think back to my early days with ACHE, it really gave me an opportunity as a very young manager to get in front of executives, and that was just so critical to my career development. So appreciate you sharing that, Stephanie. I wonder, Beth or Kevin, do you have any examples that you want to share about successful multi-generational projects?
I think the biggest one that jumped out to me as I was thinking about this is when Cone Health made the transition to Epic, right? When we changed our EMR, because I think that really kind of highlighted a lot of the multi-generational differences, right? We've got, nurses and doctors that have documented on paper for their entire careers, and now we're taking away that pen and paper. And yes, some of us have used the red, green, and black ink as well. So if you know, you know. Um, but I think that that project really kind of highlighted those differences to me, and it was very interesting to watch as our organization as a whole worked through that, and how we had to shift and support some physicians and nurses and staff that were way more resistant to change than others. And I think when all was said and done, we had done a great job, and it was a very successful implementation. But definitely a large project that had lots of multi-generational folks involved.
Yeah. And you talked about that resistance to change. So we certainly heard that theme from our audience on that mentee.
Yes.
Kevin, any examples you want to share?
Yeah, I'll share one. There's so many when you run into it, but I think one that just pops up too, that where I was really uncomfortable. All right. So, what were we saying earlier? We run towards
Discomfort.
Comfort. Yep.
comfort. I was very uncomfortable. And it was when we were working to build a specialty surgical hospital for 16 orthopods. And we had at least three generations of surgeons. And for me, it became, those two eyes, two ears, one mouth concept, but really I ended up being the one that had to kind of facilitate the conversation of, if you think about the surgical trays. So we're sitting in a room and my most senior orthopod who's really driving this whole thing, we're in the trays and somebody pulls out two instruments and the young orthopod goes, "Oh, who uses these?" And, the most senior says, "I do." And it was comical real quick because then he turned to him and said, "I suppose you also sit down when you do your total joints as opposed to being over the table." So the conversation there was very uncomfortable because while they were kind of badgering it fun, it could have been taken very, very poorly in that particular room. And so having to learn to facilitate quickly in that environment was pretty uncomfortable for me because you had people that highly trained, highly educated, but also three generations of how they wanted to go about becoming together collaborative to make sure that their whole program became efficient.
Yeah. And they had to rely on each other for success.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a very enviable position. Not.
Yeah. Made it through it, right? Still here, right?
That's right.
This too will pass. You just need to make sure you get there positively.
That's it. So, Beth, I'd like to circle back to you, and maybe now we've talked about, culture, we've talked about leadership style, we've talked about some successful projects, but let's face it, there are some challenges that come in this space. So I wonder if we can ask you to talk about some of the challenges that a young healthcare executive might face when leading people who have more experience, and kind of what are some tools that they might be able to embrace to overcome some of those challenges.
Absolutely. I think this is a great question. I've certainly lived this one. But like our mentee poll suggested, perceive, or excuse me, resistance to change is huge. I think that's anytime you have a new leader in any space, honestly. Also there's your perceived credibility. You are the newbie on the block, right? I stepped into my current role with a team member that had been there for more than 30 years, and she knew everything about that whole process. I knew a little bit, but I did know how to help lead and guide projects and things, but I didn't know all the intricate details that she did. So, um, you know, kind of again, like also you've got to look at navigating deeply rooted workflows and that culture, right? We've always done it this way. And well, that's just because that's the way we do it, those types of things. And so that can be hard as a new leader if you're coming in with, new, fresh ideas, fresh set of eyes on things. So I think really, as far as tools that young leaders can utilize, kind of goes back to a lot of the things that we discussed in our opening questions. You know, lead with humility and curiosity. Um, you know, uh, Work on that relationship building. Strong relationships are going to take you so far in life and in your career. Um, you know, Build that psychological safety, that space where people feel safe to say what they need to say and to understand that they are being heard. Um, and then again, collaborate and shared decision making. Make sure that you're including and acknowledging their experience that they bring to the table, um, because that's a huge asset. And I've certainly learned that with my current team. I mean, the person who had been here for 33-ish years has now been here for 47 years or so and is probably going to retire. And I don't know what I'm going to do to replace all that knowledge. That, and then just, again, clear alignment on your purpose. You've got to have a clear vision. Where are you going? Where are you leading that team? And you've got to make sure that they are there with you, so you can all get to the finish line together. And then again, that mutual mentorship, just not only the things that they can learn from, that experienced employees can learn from younger employees, you know, AI, IT things, technology. Younger healthcare executives may come in with that knowledge base, but also what can we learn as young folks from those more experienced team members? So.
Yeah, I wonder, Stephanie or Kevin, do you have additional tools that you feel like would be beneficial for younger healthcare leaders having to manage people who've been there a little longer than they have?
Yes, I do have one more to add to that is leading with preparation and intentionality. Go into every meeting as if you're facilitating it. It doesn't even matter if somebody's leading that discussion. Do your homework, take the 15 minutes, look at the agenda, see what type of questions you need to ask, and also it also creates a desired outcome that is mindful, and it also puts on your active listening skills, so you're listening to ensure those questions are answered, and if not, you can ask those questions in the conversation and they know that you're there to assist them and help them. So always go into every meeting as if you're leading the meeting and understand what the agenda is and the topic. Create your own agenda of what you hope that will the outcome of that meeting, because everybody has their own agenda when they turn that mic on, correct? So make sure you have your questions, because those active listening skills are going to be key.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'd love to add to and just double down on mentoring and it being, both directions. And what I mean by that is I had two great ladies, come to me and say, hey, you need to think about becoming a fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives and pursue that. And I looked at what was required, and it was like, I'm not sure I can do that. I've been clinical my entire life. There's this accounting and finance. There's some different things in operate, all these things that I may or may not understand, but through their encouragement, but also intentionality of one-on-one time with them. And my chief nurse gave me some of the best advice is to always also stay connected with those that you've been with through the years. Because in my career, the person that hired me as a physical therapist and was the administrative director, I became his vice president. And so that was a unique flip. And he's, much senior to me. And we stayed very connected all through the years and just had that mutual respect. But I always wanted to say to, listen to what they were bringing and still have that one-on-one time of, hey, what's going on here, not just what's going on up here. So
I love that. I think one of the things that I've found to be helpful, no matter what level I've been, is really, treating each person like a peer. I too am a servant leader at heart, but really trying not to leverage some type of power dynamic. It's irritating to me when it happens to me. I try not to be irritating to others. And so I really try to come more with a collaborative partnership type of approach, and really understand how we're better together than individually. So love the feedback from you guys. Stephanie, I know you have another slide that you're going to share with us. So maybe you can share what competencies new and younger healthcare leaders should, continually develop and work on, to provide some insight to our audience.
And I am a trainer by nature. I've worked in the training environment for years, so I always love a good takeaway, right? So trust and is built through repeated actions, not organizational charts. But there's some key things that are top of mind when it comes to core skills that you need to develop. And first and foremost, it's your emotional intelligence. And I'm not going to read every one of these, but I'm going to point out a few that are really important. And with the engineers at RMF, I developed a training class for emotional intelligence just for our engineers, and we use the CAP method, where you confirm the win when you're running into a difficult situation, and then you acknowledge the frustration, and then you provide the solution. And this is something that it doesn't matter if you're on a call and a client says, I'm having problems with the air handling unit that you have spec'd and has been installed. The confirm the win is, hey, this is an excellent system. This is what is your standard. And that's confirming the win, and you acknowledge the frustration. You acknowledge that, hey, I acknowledge your frustration with the air handling unit, and I'm going to provide a solution for you. Let's get our folks out there and see what it is. It may be a simple balance that needs to happen, but we're going to find out, and we're going to make sure we find some answers for you, make sure those adjustments are made. So every situation has a win. It has that acknowledgement that there's a frustration there, and then you have to provide a solution. And that is the way you go into every meeting. Now, if you said, hey, this is your spec, you deal with it, how is that going to accomplish anything? So with anything, even your children at home, this is a great method that you should utilize. And another thing is that the executive presence, I learned it a long time ago. I was on the East Chamber for the board. And I'm one of those individuals that always look like I'm 20 back in the day, even though I was 30, 40 years old, right? And I call it my chamber necklace. I have one on today where, if you have something that's catchy, even the men can have their chamber necklace, whatever that definition, a nice shirt, a nice tie, it draws that attention. And it immediately gives people something to talk about. And sometimes even the men are complimenting me on my necklace. So I will always have that dress the part, look like an executive if you're walking into that meeting, and be present and confident. And it also makes you feel more confident. So there's a few other things here. Conflict resolution, take a conflict resolution class. Take it. It will help you and practice it. So those are some of the things that I think that this is a great takeaway for later for your participants. These are some really good lessons.
Yeah, and just want to remind the audience that you can throw your questions in the chat. Jamie threw a question in the chat for you all. But Kevin or Beth, I wonder if you have other things that you'd like to add around some of those competencies that are really important, critical for our young healthcare leaders as they navigate their career.
I'm going to jump on two, Beth, and you can come in. And I was writing them down as Stephanie was showing hers, just to make sure I didn't, I have those senior moments that where I forget. So I wanted to make sure we shared these. But as you develop into that leader you want to be, you've got to be able to critically think. And I think more importantly, that's something you have to develop, because sometimes it's not something you've been doing and then you're asking others to do. So you got to continue to critically think. One of the hardest things for me was crucial conversations, especially with those that have been in their role for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so I spent a lot of time developing that talent, that skill, and I have a long ways to go. Right? It's just that crucial conversation. And it doesn't always have to be a negative one. There are just as important, if not more important, crucial conversations to have when somebody is successful. If you go back to my good friend Mark, who hired me, his crucial conversation when I became his boss was, here's the coffee. We need to make sure we clear this air, because there's nothing going to be between us, just like it has been for the last 15 years. He did it. He demonstrated it to me, not me to him at that point in time. So learn the crucial conversations. I'm still learning. So
I think we all can use work in that space. Beth, what would you add?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the crucial conversations, and have read the book and have the book right behind me here at my desk, and refer back to it. I would just also echo the emotional intelligence, that executive presence, and then really to me, and this is really big for me, just being a lifelong learner, right? There's always so much that we can learn. Even when you think you've mastered something, there's still more to learn. So um, those are the things that I would highlight from Stephanie's slide there.
Yeah, I really appreciated that all of you kind of touched on, in one way or another, at that emotional intelligence piece, because I think sometimes people get promoted, you move into a new position, and you have an idea of how you're supposed to be, and maybe you have a good knowledge base, but really making sure that you're balancing the people acumen with the business and functional acumen is very important to make sure that you bring people along. I've been known to say, if you're a leader and nobody's following you, you're just taking a walk. And that's not the good place to be as a leader. You definitely don't want to be taking a walk. We have a couple of questions from the audience, so I'm going to pivot just for a bit so that we can start to answer some of those. So, and I'll open this up to all of you. So whoever wants to go first, jump in. When have you seen a leader's ego damage a team, and what prevented that from happening in your own leadership? I think this is a phenomenal question.
I can certainly jump in there. So have seen this, have witnessed this, and as the team member that was impacted by the leader's ego, um, it breaks down that psychological safety, right? I mean, you just kind of, I don't know, maybe some people want to scream and yell, but for me, it's like, okay, I'll just be quiet now. Maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did or whatever. So, um, I think um, the biggest thing is, and I strive hard to do this with my team because I have been on the receiving end of that. But just trying to maintain that psychological safety, trying to maintain neutral conversations to get to an area, a point where we understand each other and where we're coming from, and just maintaining our respect for each other.
You didn't say this, Beth, but this is what I heard in your answer, that you
Mhm.
were managing your own emotion while trying to
Yes,
navigate that situation in real time.
absolutely. And I mean, as you know, we work on a lot of these things in our NLA program as well. But yeah, that has been huge for me. And I can say honestly, over the last 6 months or so, I definitely have grown in that area and continue to strive to improve in that area. But definitely a key to being a good leader. Got to control those emotions.
And I can echo that. I experienced in my past life, not at RMF, but I'm prior service military, right? Um, so when a leader is real aggressive leadership, sometimes you have to understand their perspective and where they're coming from and the why behind that aggression. However, I find if you pause and have an agenda. That's why you're prepared in that meeting. And if it's something that we can address or parking lot, or you say, hey, that's a valid point. Let's come back to that, because when you cool down those emotions and you come back to that agenda item, it's a lot easier. People have cleared that emotion because people remember how you react, not what they've said. And your reaction to those challenges is more important than what they said. You cannot control them. All you can do is control yourself. And that's part of the conflict resolution. And it also goes hand in hand with emotional intelligence. Take that deep breath, pause for 5 seconds before you respond. And if that response is, hey, you've made a valid point, let's come back to that so the team can be better prepared to help you with those answers. And that ends the conversation and it puts it in the parking lot in a respectful manner.
Kevin, any ego horror stories for you?
I'm just going to be very genuine and authentic here. So I've observed it and I've done it. All right. And so it took me a moment to realize I was doing it. And then that moment of pause, right? But then you have to come back and be genuine, authentic with those that you're with. And not just your words at that moment in time, but you have damaged that safe space for folks to where they may share. And so you just have to continue to be better yourself, but also follow up your your actions need to follow what your words said when you were trying to be genuine, authentic, and apologize and really kind of open that space and be vulnerable.
I commend you for sharing that story, Kevin. I think it takes courage to do it and to say that. I will say one thing I found If you are courageous enough to have that crucial conversation with somebody about how they're occurring to you, a lot of times they don't realize that they're coming across that way. So I've definitely had some conversations where people were like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize, that was how I was being perceived. And so sometimes it's really even just a lack of awareness from the person. Now, it isn't always that, but sometimes it is. Um, let's see, we have another question that I think would be great to pause and reflect on here. Again, I'll open it up to the panel, but what parallels can be drawn around leading those with more experience when you are entering a new field? It's not always an age-related experience, but maybe moving into customary, a customarily clinical role without a clinical degree, as an example.
I can lead with that. I have a very colorful background from the military into training at Discover Card and then moving into the construction industry. Every turn has been a transition of culture, even in industry and industry culture. And I will have to say, I asked a lot of questions and I did a lot of observing every time. And when I came from the military and to Discover Card, training's my thing. But I was used to training soldiers. They follow directions. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Yes, drill sergeant. Yes, no, drill sergeant. That's just the way it is. You're saluting. People follow directions. You go in the civilian world, you're like, whoa, I'm going to really have to encourage the active listening to keep people from falling asleep. And uh, I understood that I had to come with a story to tell the training. I had to make it interactive. I had to make it exciting. I had to influence them to want to learn. And sometimes it's about that influence and just being engaging, and it brings them to the table. And stick around for questions afterwards and ask them a question, get it there early, and as they're coming in, engage and talk to them so they feel comfortable communicating back with you. But I did get one comment from my boss at Discover Card. She says, well, when are you going to put some family photos out? And before you come in the morning and ask for things, can we say good morning? I was used to that direct, hey, these are the things I need for my training class today. So I had to learn a lot, but it took me to step back and that courage of communication on the other end. Like, I'm just not a tigger like you are, and I'm the tigger. And I just need a moment to drink my coffee and relax. So I had to learn that individual's learning style and the way they want to be welcomed.
Yeah, and you've all kind of talked about transitioning from one space to a different space. So, Kevin and Beth, I wonder what you would have to add to enhance that perspective.
I would say just remember that you're not necessarily a leader because you know more, but you've been placed in a leadership position because you can help create those conditions that can drive
Right.
outcomes, right? So it's, not necessarily your knowledge, but how you can influence the work that's being done.
Thanks, Beth.
I've just wrapped that up a little bit with your facilitating and intentionality. Both Beth just talked about facilitating and Stephanie's talked about intentionality. Come with an idea, with a plan, with where you want to be. Success is preparation meets opportunity. And so if you're coming in prepared and the opportunity, and then you can become successful, and you're just facilitating those that may and should probably know more than you do, not only because they're more experienced, but they, I'll end there. I'm stumbling over my words.
Well, I think this is fun. I will say this as someone who started out as a factory worker and then went into accounting and then nursing. Um, you know, it's been fun to see that. And while I would say some things are different, some things are similar because people are people. And so sometimes I would say don't overthink it, right? It's those good human relationships. So, Kevin, we're going to step to you next to say, what advice do you have for our younger healthcare executives who might be placed in roles and in positions of greater responsibility than their seniors?
That intentionality is where I would start. And, I'm looking right here because I wrote 4 things down to make sure if asked, I wanted to touch on these things. So we talked about, for me, conducting that regular kind of one-on-one development in conversation, not only with those that I might be reporting to, but those that are working through me, right? Your 1-ups, your 1-downs, 2-ups, 2-downs. With that, I love Stephanie, what did you call
Call it my chamber necklace.
my chamber necklace?
It's a chamber necklace technique.
It's difficult in today's world, especially after the pandemic, but it's not to the chamber necklace. This is something that somebody shared with me years ago, was to make sure you're dressing for the job you want, not the one you have. Right. So if you're coming with an intentionality, make sure you're coming to that interview or showing up in that capacity. When you're doing these one-on-ones or leading others, set clear expectations. If you're setting meetings, I always like to put a purpose in the invite so people know what they're coming to prepare for. This is taken away maybe from Stephanie. Teach your team how to think, not just what to do. Mm-hmm. So can they critically think? Can they do this when you're not there? We've talked, I've got a couple others I'll add, but I think I might take away from my fellow panelists. So I'm going to wait for the next 2. If I'll bring them back, how's that sound?
All right. We can always loop back around.
Yeah.
Stephanie and Beth, what would you like to add in terms of advice for our younger healthcare executives who have responsibility greater than their seniors?
Yes. If you're comfortable, that means you're not growing. So you need to challenge yourself in addition to your team. But the way to do that is to learn what their strengths are and also to push them a little towards discomfort to help them understand it's okay to be discomfortable, and I will be there with you. I'll be in that space and we'll make this journey together. We'll walk through the valley and we'll climb up that hill and we'll see the sunset. So problem solving to me is, I love it. I always see, oh, we're going to do this new thing that we've never done before. And I'm like, yay, this is a new challenge. I guess because I live in that headspace of running towards it and seeing the opportunity and learning opposed to the discomfort of failure. And your mindset is huge. Anybody who's worked with me, they always say, don't give Stephanie a task because it will happen. If not, she'll make it happen. And so sometimes people are careful about the wish list in the office because, hey, it's going to happen. But I love that opportunity to problem solve and noodle. It's like, Sherlock Holmes watching that movie and trying to figure out midway through, what is the outcome.
Love that. Beth, what do you want to add?
Yeah, I would just say, from my personal experience, for a new leader to approach the role with respect, be transparent, be willing to learn, but also confidently bring forth your new ideas, your new, that fresh set of eyes. And when you do those things, I think it really can transform what would have been a challenge into a great strength for a multi-generational team.
Yeah, I love all these. I think we've garnered so much nuggets and wisdom and insights from you guys already. But I think let's just talk about, AI is very present in our current reality and lots of emerging technologies. It's really changing the way that we do things. But, what kind of risks or pitfalls should people look to avoid um, with some of the AI and emerging technology? What are your thoughts?
Check the work. I'll give an example up from yesterday. We were using Copilot to do some things. We've given it internally some information, and it kind of started to give us things back. And we asked it a question of how did you get to 14.5% denial rates in this particular area or department? And it came back and said, good catch. I made it up.
Hallucinations.
Right. And I went, what happens if we wouldn't have asked the question or, fact check? So so for AI, what I would say is you've got to adopt, right? If we're not, we're going to be left behind. We've got to be there, but it can't be the end all be all. And as new emerging leaders, don't depend completely on that to skip the actual activity, if you may, or the experience. And so be intentional with it, but allow the experience to still pull yourself in.
Yeah, I think I would say, don't forget to use your critical thinking skills, right? The computer's smart. It can give you lots of great information, but still don't let it weaken your critical thinking.
It hurts your mind that you're avoiding failure. And again, we do our best learning when we go through those failure events, even through our drafts. The critical thinking is huge, as Beth had mentioned. But with AI, especially in engineering on the technical side, we've ran those tests through spec creation, and about 60% of it is correct. And 40% failure with that kind of stuff with engineering, that's a big deal. So if you think you're going to have shortcuts when it comes to the technical aspects of AI and it's, pulling data from everywhere, not specific to your state, to your code, you're going to fail and didn't even know it. So until you're down the road and you have so many errors that it's irreversible. So you have to make sure you just have those learned experiences, and that's where we do our best learning. It's good for grammar if you want to try it out for grammar and those types of things, but please don't use it on a technical level until we know it's good.
And don't use it on a clinical level, right? With
Yeah.
patients' lives at stake until we know it's good.
I think what I would add to this part of the conversation is really just I think there's varying levels of trust in AI and technology. And, um, that can be either a good thing or it can be a danger zone. So I think, to all of your points, making sure that that verification and that double check is there, that validation of the information, in my humble opinion, it augments humanity, but it doesn't replace the things that are uniquely ours to do. We've had a couple of more questions come in the chat, so I'm going to move to those. What's one thing a leader should never say to an employee with 20 plus years of experience?
I think.
Yep.
If you're going to lead, you're going to have to lead with confidence. It doesn't diminish, you know, here's the decision, here's the direction, or let me ask you a question. How do you feel? Opposed to, I think, as soon as you say I think, then you're not confident. And it's like replacing the sure. You say sure instead of yes. That just is not confident to me. So I always make sure I correct my kids when they say, sure, let's go do this. Is that a confident yes? So just speak with confidence.
That's great. Beth or Kevin, anything that you would add as to what to never say to a 20 plus year employee?
Don't dismiss their critical thinking skills, right? And their expertise. Um, if you don't necessarily agree with it, then there's other ways to have those conversations, but always acknowledge the value that they bring to the table. And then, you can dive a little deeper into the conversation, but just remain respectful.
Mhm.
Depends on the situation, but I understand what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. So if I go back to the time I put the scrubs on for 90 days, right? Coming out of there, 90 days didn't make me 9 years a circulator, right? I might have I I might have earned my honorary R, but I'll never get the N unless I go back and do the education and do the training and do all that, right? So I think do not dismiss, what they're trying to bring forward and continue to listen. So what should you never say? Well, there's a lot of times I just want to be quiet and just not say anything, and that's the wrong thing to do too, in most instances. So I don't have a great answer for that because it's situational for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Kevin. I think one thing I would say as a leader, sometimes happens, it feels easy in the moment, but in the long run, it ends up hurting you, is when you lean on someone else's power and give your own away. We're doing this because so and so said such and such.
Mhm.
Um, you know, you really you really diminish your own leadership when that happens sometimes. So I think that's great. Um, let's see. With a comment in the chat, don't let AI take your voice or diminish your value. It is great to augment, and we are feeding it. Understand it and lean into it so it gets better. So, thank you for that comment from our audience. And another question: when experience and innovation collide, have conflict, which should win?
Would say proven results. What's most efficient? What is the proven results? And there are times, especially with the engineering side, we have multiple different platforms that people prefer to use and like to use, but what provides the best result and outcome and what's most efficient? And sometimes that has to be proven. And also with innovation, you have to have communication and training. And if you do not provide the proper communication and training, it doesn't matter how great the platform is. It will fail.
That's well said. Other thoughts? Um, Other thoughts around that? Between experience and innovation, if they're colliding, which one wins?
I mean, I think you've got to have a little of both, right? But if they're really, really colliding, take a step back, pause for a moment. What is going to be the best overall decision for the organization? Um, and not that that's easy to determine, but I think both have value. But you've just got to think, in the end, what is the best outcome.
So I'm going to add to this some the acronym of PDSA, which if you've been in healthcare, you kind of know what it is, right? But for me, standing in front of a group of team members, it now stands for please do something already. All right? Because
Love it.
we assess and we evaluate, but we don't move. And so the innovator is where I'm going to go with this, because our newest team members for me are the ones that get my covered wagon out of the Oregon Trail rut, because they give us new ideas to jump off that and go a different direction. Got to listen to that. However, it's not a but question or a but statement. However, I want them to fail 20% of the time. So I want them innovating. I give them permission to do that. And I want them to do it fast, because that's where we learn the most. Don't stand there and wait and assess it. So please do something already, fail fast 20% of the time. So that collides with which one should win. I think I'm going to probably lean towards let's innovate and let's see if what we can do makes us better tomorrow. But I love the engineering aspect that Stephanie brought into it, because I have a son that's an architect and an accountant. And so it's still trying to meld that all together. Yeah. I'm such a left brain person that I can't believe I just said what I did.
Hey, Vi, this is Jamie, and I put that question in there. And I love all of this because Stephanie did bring, there's some valid points for saying you got to make sure it's going to work. People are going to get hurt. But then failing forward really resonated with me as well, because I like to move forward and keep things moving. And I also just want to point out that there's experience, but there's also timing. So you may have tried it before, but it wasn't the right time.
That's right.
And you didn't know that at the time. So now we can try it again later. And so not letting people with more experience than you. And when I speak about experience, I'm not talking necessarily about years, but they've been through it before. It didn't work before. They're going to be your saboteurs. But the time is different and the parties are different now. And so, I guess that's kind of where my question was coming from is, as a leader, what kind of tolerance do we have for allowing people with that type of experience to be in the way of momentum?
Love it.
I guess that was the question. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great question, Jamie. Our next question from the audience is, how do you encourage creative thinking in a field that's often constrained by policy, workflow, and risk? You guys are asking some really great questions today, I just want to say.
Well, a lot of times when you're promoting creative thinking, and I'm always a think outside the box. They call me the fun committee here at the office. So I always ask questions to see if they've asked all the questions. Have you thought about this? I just start asking questions. What's the cost? What's the budget? Is this indoor? Is it outdoor? Meaning, ours is about equipment. And I start getting them to think about thinking outside the box. Sometimes it's the questions I don't know. I'm coming in from a non-technical perspective. And if I were, a nurse or an executive leading a hospital, these are questions that an everyday person would be asking. And sometimes it really gets them thinking outside the box and get more creative. So I always put myself in the other person's shoes and try to think on those levels instead of having my technical hat on all the time, and that kind of stimulates creative thinking, in my opinion.
Kevin or Beth, anything you want to add about things that enhance creativity in a field that has lots of constraints with policy, workflow, and risk?
I like to start off with, if it's the policy or the process, that is creating the conversation. How long's the policy or process been in place, and why did we make the decision to put it in place? So it's okay to challenge the current process or policy. However, we do have to put construct around it if we're going to change it, because there's going to be education, there's going to be unintended consequences, because we put this in place at some point in time because either harm or somebody, we can use all those bad words, right? Something was put in place at that point in time, and now we've got this other technology in place and it may not align. And so, the electronic health record changed a lot of things for us. I mean, we had the conversation earlier around Epic. Name the electronic health record. It's all changing the way we function and work. There's ambient listening now to help us document in the room, right? There's bots helping us do 835s, 837, denial, whatever it might be in healthcare. We've got controls, Stephanie, inside operating rooms that are telling us the humidity, et cetera. And if one gets out of, it's sounding an alarm where we used to have to look on the wall, all those things. And so policy's got to advance. And so if we don't allow those early careerists to help us think through that differently, we're not being the leader that we probably should be in that transition.
And Kevin, you really hit a note that resonated with me, because there's a great example of policy and change. Sometimes you have to create that change. When we were presenting some innovative bathroom pods and also prefabbed ORs, I call them fancy ORs. They have stainless steel walls. They're really gorgeous. We I was part of the D&I team that helped install these new innovative ORs. And we actually brought, before we even spec'd them, DHSR to the table. We knew that they would be at the NCHEA conference, and we brought this vendor in. He brought his trailer right up. He drove from Texas, put his trailer in the parking lot, and provided a walkthrough with DHSR and got them in person. And we were able to get that approved through DHSR, and we were able to get those installed. And we did the same thing with prefab ceilings. Those ceilings had to be altered for FGI, and we went in and it wasn't approved, and we got it approved as long as they made these modifications to be compliant with FGI. So if you want change when it comes to policy, you have to make it. You have to create the path and not be afraid to challenge the status quo. So there's ways you can do it. And you just got to bring the people who are making those policies to the table. And if you can't get them to the table, you got to bring it to them and find the opportunity.
That's great. Beth, anything you want to add?
Sure. I would say, within the constraints of those policies and workflows and all the things, like in healthcare, for example, pull from your personal experiences, right? We all bring a slightly different background to the table, right? I mean, I have nursing experience, but I also have revenue cycle experience. And so pull from the different strengths of your experiences and your team's experiences to try to think outside the box to come up with creative solutions to ongoing issues. Again, while staying within the constraints of the policies that are in place.
Thank you. And so I heard a healthy balance of understand why we put things in place, but don't be afraid to challenge or question why they were put in place and is it still relevant? So thank you to our panelists for that. Our next question comes from the audience. Think of the best leader you've worked for. I'll give you guys a second to visualize that person. What did they do that made you want to follow them regardless of their age or experience?
So for me, I'll start I think of many, and it's characteristics that it really kind of attracted that for me. And the reverse is true too. If you want to ask the question, what leader do I not want to be like? It was definitely characteristics. So when you were earlier, when we were talking about, okay, I observed something, I didn't do what I observed. The ego at some point, but this person's ego got in the way. So what are the characteristics that I'm looking for? And that's, that openness to be available, right? To allow me to be vulnerable. We talked about that safe space multiple times. Those are key things that I would say that I really kind of look for in that, and I understand what those best leaders were. And one that always resonates with me is, praise in public, right? Praise in public and do the other things privately. So I'll pause there.
And I would like to say my I'd say mentor in this industry. It was when I worked and first entered into this marketplace, and when I say marketplace, the AEC community for healthcare. He fought for me to be in the room when others were asking, "Why is she here?" And he basically said, because I want her here. She needs to be here and she can run circles around everyone. He basically told the room that she is my right hand, and if I give her direction, you're going to listen to it. So that right there, fighting for me when others didn't know me or didn't know my capabilities, that right there resonated with me for the rest of my life. And I always see young potential leaders in the industry, and I always think about that, and I'm fighting for them to be in those spaces as well. And you always need to pay it forward again. Give your gift away and make sure you're paying that forward. But that was a big deal to me, and it never left me.
Beth, what do you want to add about the best leader you've worked with?
I would say the leader being a good listener, having integrity, and just being respectful. And this one's going to be sound kind of funny, but get out of the way and let me do the work, right? Um, but yeah, I think those are again, like Kevin was saying, just characteristics that really stand out.
I think you know, people follow a leader. They don't follow a title typically. And so, in my experience, I've found that leadership is, yes, it's what you do and the results you achieve, but it's also who you're being as you get those results, because the means to the end matter. It's not enough to get the result. You can get the results in a way that leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, or you can get to the result in a way that brings people along and allows everyone to contribute their gifts, skills, talents, and abilities to that effort. So thank you all for sharing that. Um, I I want to pivot now. We were talking about technology earlier, and I'm really curious on your thoughts. We have several generations now that have really grown up with social media as a staple um, of their lives, really, of their social life. And, I'm wondering, how are you seeing that impact multi-generational teams in the workplace, or when you're working on projects together, if at all, either for the positive or not?
mixed for me. The first mix I would say is most of them can multitask with the best of them. Right? They may have three things going on this phone over here and a computer here, and they're still answering your question. And I'm just watching them going, I'm in awe because I'm not a singular focus, but I am not a multitasker. And that this generation, it feels that they can, speed to market is the word I always like to say with what they've got going on, and they're bringing it back and it's accurate. And it's like, all right, I don't see that. So I don't know if that connects that quickly. And then the second piece that I would say is I'm having to teach them how to be in-person social, if that makes sense. And so, being present is crucial as a leader. And if you're a young leader and you're not in the room being present, you don't always have to say something, but being present makes a big difference throughout the entire part of the career.
Yeah, yes, and you can always teach technical skills. You cannot teach social skills. Sometimes it's so difficult. It has to be experienced. You can give them a set of instructions for technical, but social, you have to have those opportunities for them to engage. We will quarterly have a social event internally with our team so they know how to interact and engage with one another as well, because we're engineers, we're literally designing hospitals. So that engagement is so critical. We have a pool table so they can take those breaks and help them socialize. Also, we do have a kitchen with a break room. If you don't, you really need one. And when we have pizza Fridays, and when we have pizza Fridays, we want everybody in the same space, not going back to their desk and eating. So there's some forced engagement, but we do also encourage them to socially get to know each other and do that engagement and externally. And we always say, if you're ever going to want to reach that divisional leader role, you have to have that client engagement and people skills. That's the one skill that you have to experience that I cannot put on a piece of paper and teach you.
Beth, anything you want to
Yeah,
add?
I would add, and this is a slightly different take on it, but um, I have to remind myself leading a multi-generational team. I have one of those can click faster and pull up 49 different websites and pages and still hear everything I'm saying and give me what information back that I need. But my perception the first few times I experienced that was this person's really getting on my nerves. They are not paying a lick of attention to anything I'm saying, right? Because I'm so used to if you're talking to me, look at me, right? And they're over here on their phone, on the keyboard. You can hear the keys clicking away. But yet they are probably more engaged than I am sitting face to face with somebody sometimes, right? So it's just kind of, I mean, that's a little different perspective, but just because they function differently doesn't mean that they're not really engaged. I had to learn that because I was like, oh my gosh, if they don't quit clicking and if they don't look at the screen, because I do lead a team remotely, so that's added another layer to it. Um, but again, the value they bring to the table as well. So
That's great. And you know, as we wrap up this panel and I prepare to turn it over to Jamie, I'm going to ask each of you to just share with the audience a key insight or a key takeaway that you would like to leave them with. And Beth, we'll start with you.
sure. Um, as you approach any leadership role, especially a new leadership role, be kind and respectful and build those personal relationships. It's going to take you a long way.
Stephanie, let's go to you next.
Yes, lead through repeated action and also take accountability and have humility when you are wrong. And sometimes you don't even realize you're a leader when you're viewed as a leader in the industry. I've encountered that when I was in the military, and I was part of the first co-ed class going through basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and the drill sergeant told the guys we were only there to motivate them to achieve excellence. And at the end, we were the ones achieving excellence because we took the challenge in the opposite way. And I will never forget, I was on the 2 mile run, and there were, you have 60 people in this class, and there were only 4 men in front of me, and I could hear 2 guys behind me saying, all we have to do is beat her. And all that did was like, yeah, I was running harder, and I realized I was running against myself, and it was my pain. I have 30 more seconds. I could do this. I don't care if I'm dying. And they didn't beat me. And I realized at that point I was a leader. So sometimes you're a leader and you don't even realize it. So yeah, that was a fun, exciting moment when I crossed that finish line, and I was hurting, but that pain was only 30 seconds for a lifetime of I beat them. So,
Love it. Love it. Kevin, round us out with a key takeaway or insight.
I will attempt to do that in 30 seconds. So for me, that being genuine, being authentic, being present, all that so important. But with the way the world is going at this point in time, it's okay to not know and not to be the smartest in the room. So we all have different personalities. And I saw earlier in the chat, we had an ENTJ come up. Well, I will go to DISC, right? We use DISC, and it's helped me immensely understand my team and how to communicate. And we use that to help each other because I've got D's on the team, I've got I's, I've got S's, I've got C's, if you're familiar with it. And it's like, how do I connect with them and how do they connect with me? And so it's okay to use those types of tools to make sure you can continue to be a leader and not have to be the smartest in the room.
I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a huge round of applause to our panelists who did an absolutely phenomenal job answering all these questions and tackling this topic that's so important to us all. And at this time, I'd like to turn it back over to you, Jamie.
Well, thank you, Vi. We are giving a big round for our moderator as well. I had no doubts when I had Sharia ask if you would moderate this panel that you would be perfect for it. And so I hope you all came away with just a toolbox full of insights and helps. I hope that you reach out to this panel and others in ACHE if you have questions or needs. And what a robust discussion. I know my cup is full. My cup is full tonight. So thank you all for this. With that, there is a link to the survey, the post-event survey in the chat from Alex. And I am going to turn it over to Alex, but thank you all. Amazing, amazing.
Thank you so much. On behalf of ACHE, I want to thank our chapter leaders that planned today's session, our moderator and panelists, and all of you for your participation. Please complete the evaluation, which is open for 1 week. The direct link is in the chat box. You can also access the evaluation by visiting your MyACHE page and selecting My Online Learning from the helpful links section on the right side of the screen. From there, click on the Access My Courses link and you'll be directed to our learning management system where you can complete the evaluation. In the same location, you'll be able to access the recording of this session within approximately 2 business days. Everyone who attended today's event in its entirety will see their 1.5 hours of virtual interactive education credit posted to their MyACHE account within 2 weeks of this session in the My Education Credit section. This concludes our session, which is copyrighted in 2016, or sorry, sorry about that, 2026 by the American College of Healthcare Executives, all rights reserved. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Wonderful session.